What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Penguins podcast. Today, I have a unusual lineup with me, not the normal Connor co-host. We have one of our newest writers at Let's Talk Penguins, Steven.
Hey.
And then, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Penguins podcast. Today, I have a unusual lineup with me, not the normal Connor co-host. We have one of our newest writers at Let's Talk Penguins, Steven.
Hey.
And
How you
then I also have a good buddy of mine, a close friend in real life, my buddy Colin.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
So Steven is from the UK. You guys cannot tell by his accent. Let's we're gonna jump into Steven a little bit, talk about him and talk about hockey in the UK. If you want to kind of dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So hockey in the UK, there is a professional league. It's called the Elite League. It recently upgraded to 12 professional teams from 10. The pay's not great. Normally they attract over sort of like middle of the road ECHL players. They'll take people straight out of college. That aren't, don't really have much in the way of professional offers in North America.
Right.
Kind of how they'll get players to come across by offering them the ability to enroll in like certain masters programs and things of that nature as a way to convince people to come over. Because the pay in the Elite League compared to other European leagues isn't anywhere near as good. It's probably one of the lowest paid. When it comes to the popularity of the Elite League itself, it depends massively from team to team.
Right, as it always does.
Yeah, as it always does. Like, for example, my local team is the Manchester Storm. Their arena only seats 2,000, but they get pretty close to selling that out most of the time.
Oh.
Those fans that do attend are usually pretty dedicated.
Yeah, I was going to say, I picture it being the people that are going to the games are pretty dedicated, pretty loyal fans.
Yeah, they usually are. The Elite League also has the not so great reputation of, much like the Quebec Professional League that I can never pronounce the name of, the LNAH. How they have seemed to attract a lot of the more goon-like players. The Elite League tends to get those types of players as well. Because if there's one thing British people like, it's people punching each other.
Cool, that's super interesting. Coming from North America, you kind of think of hockey as, North American sport, obviously, and then like the major countries like Europe as like Germany, and then you got Russia, dominating World Juniors and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool to, kind of eye-opening to see it, kind of, I don't know, build or being popular in the UK.
Yeah, they recently changed the league, like the roster rules for teams, so that now teams can have 3 players that don't count against their roster limit if they are under the age of 23 and British trained.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like a move to try and develop the game, because there have been a couple of examples of British kids who will go over at the age of 14 or 15 and go over to play in Junior A, and usually end up going to like a Division 3 college. One of the people to really keep an eye out for is there's a kid called Liam Kirk who's eligible for the 2018 draft. There is a second tier professional division called the EPIHL, because why not confuse everything? He's at the age of like 16 to 17. He scored over a point per game in that league, which is, professional men.
Yeah, he's playing against grown men.
He's playing against grown men at over a point per game at a very young age.
Yeah, that's super impressive for any league.
Yeah, and there's a small chance that he may actually be drafted, be one of the few British-based players to be drafted out of Britain.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. That's definitely a name that I'll have to write down and keep an eye out next summer for. So, my next question is how popular does the NHL transfer into the UK for you guys? Like, there's a lot of people watching games. Obviously, you don't have like local TV like we do, but is there any games that are broadcasted, or is there a lot of watching live streams of games? You know, how did you get into the NHL?
Um, as to how it is, sort of in a general sense, there is a channel that does broadcast the NHL games. It used to be on like one of the basic channels you get without having to have cable or anything. Used to broadcast it, but they went through cost-cutting measures and lost all their sports contracts. So they actually broadcast on a channel that costs an extra £5 per month on top of like the top sports package you have to get with cable.
Okay.
So it's super expensive to watch, and it's also only ever like one game every other day or so.
Right, I picture it being like how Colin we have NBCSN here in the States, so they play like all the national games, like if the Penguins have played Chicago, whatever, like all the big name teams would be on. I pictured it something like that.
Yeah,
Right.
it's usually what they do. Normally they piggyback off the NBCSN broadcast,
Cool.
and they'll pick up
Yeah.
a couple of extra local broadcasts throughout the week. But the coverage on television isn't great. So those people that are fans tend to have to rely upon NHL Game Center, NHL TV, or whatever it's called
Social
these days.
media.
Social media, you know, other unscrupulous means of watching hockey, as you know, the availability just isn't there.
Yeah, definitely. I got one more last question for you. It's so you're writing here at Let's Talk Pens First. You're one of our newer writers,
Yeah.
and you're kind of focusing on Wilkes-Barre this year, yeah.
Yes.
So my question is for you. For even us here in the States, there's not a lot of coverage. I don't know. We don't get to watch a lot of AHL games. Even being living in Pittsburgh, you know, Wilkes-Barre's on the other side of the state. There's not a lot of TV. So, where do you, you know, get most of your knowledge? Because you talking to you before the show, you seemed super knowledgeable about prospects and stats of the hockey stats in general.
A lot of what I get for Wilkes-Barre is I get a subscription to AHL Live, which is hit and miss at the best of times.
Okay.
The quality's never great because normally what it is whoever's in the arena will just take a plug-in of what's on the scoreboard. Apologies. We'll take a plug-in of what's on the scoreboard and just run that through, and that's the live stream you get. So you'll miss things for goal announcements and all this. So it's not perfect, but you can see most of the games through AHL Live. I followed a guy for a while on Twitter called Highland Park Hockey. He kind of moved into more covering sort of a lot of the northeastern minor league teams, because he started out doing just Wilkes-Barre, and then he moved on to Lehigh Valley, and he started doing things about Providence and other northeastern minor league teams. So he's kind of dwindled off a bit. But the Wilkes-Barre Scranton themselves, their own social media team, is actually pretty good at getting things out there. They always have highlight videos up in a hurry if for whatever reason they could catch a game. And obviously AHL Live has a replay function, which again isn't perfect, but gives you.
Well, you can work with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. That's awesome to know. I don't know. Anybody that has read a couple of my articles on Let's Talk Pens knows that I'm huge into prospects. I love prospects. I did an article earlier this year when the Penguins first signed Zach Austin Reese, saying, watch out, this kid's the real deal, I watched a lot of college hockey, so like I kind of knew the name and recognized him. So I also did an article breaking down the Penguins roster and how many college players that the Penguins have on their roster, and there's something crazy, like 20 people have played NCAA hockey. Like, that's an insane amount of people in one team that played college hockey. So I'm sure that definitely throughout the season this year, that we'll definitely be talking about Wilkes-Barre a lot, because I love prospects. That's probably my favorite part of hockey.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like it's kind of why I started watching Wilkes-Barre. I was like, anybody can watch an NHL game and get an appreciation for who's good and who's not.
Right.
But I was like, when someone gets called up, I don't want to be thinking, oh, who's this? What's their deal? What can they do well? What can they not do well? I wanted to have that base knowledge where I can go, okay, how's that going to translate into the game?
Yeah,
and that's kind of why I started watching Wilkes-Barre as much as I did, was because I was like, well, that's where most of the prospects are. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Alright, so I'm gonna stop bombarding you with all these questions and let's kind of hop into it here. So, hockey summer. This summer's been pretty boring compared to last year. No huge moves. The expansion draft was kind of let down. Nothing really exciting. But there was a couple stories that broke this week. A couple re-signings around the league. So we're gonna hop into those a little bit. 2 signings by the Penguins. First one, Brian Dillman re-signed for 6 years at $24.6 million. That's just above $4 million per. And Sheary signed 3x3. So we'll talk about Dillman first. I think he's kind of more important than Sheary is. I don't know. What is your guys' opinion on the Dillman contract? Before I give you guys mine.
I really like the deal. I was nervous the day of the deal, as that was when arbitration was supposed to happen, and he could only get a 1-year arbitration deal, and then he'd go to unrestricted free agency, and I was pretty worried about the possibility of losing Dumoulin in a year, because I think Dumoulin is among the most underrated defensemen in the league. Yeah. Obviously, I'm coming from a biased point of view here as a Penguins fan, someone watching down at Wilkes-Barre, but like he's just taken to the NHL like incredibly easily. He plays with most of his time with Chris Letang when he's healthy. Through the playoffs, he was a leading time on ice getter. He played 22 minutes a night of not easy matchups. He would go against Ovechkin. He would go against Bobby Ryan, who somehow remembered how to play hockey. He'd go against Philip Forsberg every night. And for getting him at 6 years at $4.1 million a year, the offense, not great. Admittedly, it's seen, it's not his calling card.
Obviously.
He makes a good first pass. He plays very good defense. He has a very good stick. He skates well. He has a big body, and he can use it when he needs to. Yeah. He's very much the modern NHL defender. He's that prototype.
Yeah.
And if you look at some of his comparable deals around the league, you look at Adam Lawson. Got a very similar deal when the salary cap was a little bit lower. Same with Jonas Brody. Same with Marcus Scandella. He's in that realm of like legitimate top 4D, where his value to the Penguins is probably a lot higher than it is to a lot of other teams in the league. Because finding someone that can play the minutes and deal with the style of Chris Letang on a nightly basis is worth pretty much whatever they ask of you.
Right, yeah. You brought something up that his offense, obviously his offensive numbers aren't there. He scored, 1 goal this year, 1 in the finals. But I don't think that's necessarily him being bad at offense. I see him, move the puck well. I see him take good shots from the point, but obviously that's not what he's getting paid to do. He's not paid to skate around the zone and make something happen. I think the offensive ability is there. I don't think he's offensively handicapped, if that makes sense. He has the ability to get a decent shot off and get pucks low and hard to the net when he needs to. But like you said, he plays with Chris Letang most of the time. It's much more of a simpler game if he feeds that puck to Letang and lets Letang do his thing in the zone, and he worries more about the defensive zone, which is what he's clearly getting paid to do is worry about the defensive zone.
Yeah, I think it reminds me a lot of when Paul Martin spent a couple
Yeah.
of years ahead with Chris Letang. He's not quite at the Paul Martin level of defense yet, but I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility to think he'll get there.
Yeah,
He's
for
not
sure.
as he's not as dynamic offensively as Paul Martin is, but to being there to be the safety blanket of sorts for Letang and allowing Letang to, as Sullivan's system, which encourages him to do, just go for it. You
Yeah.
know, if you're there and you think you can take that opportunity, you get encouraged to do so. And Chris Letang doesn't need a second invitation to go and try and do something ridiculous in the offensive zone.
Yeah, I heard that comparison earlier this week actually to him being a younger Paul Martin. Not quite what Paul Martin was, but definitely has the same potential to be what Paul Martin was here for Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, go ahead.
I just had a couple points I want to make. I think it's a solid deal, honestly. Coming from his stats, he's not one to produce a lot of points, but I mean, 15 points. Yeah, it's low for playing the amount of minutes he had. But I mean, the amount of defense and like how big and huge he was on games, shutting down star players all the time. And he's 25 years old. He's a young kid. He's still learning and consistent. Every game, he'd go in there and at least have one or two outstanding defensive plays. And I mean, he took about 78 shots roughly last year. That's a little bit over a shot a game. And I mean, yeah, you want D to be able to just get it on net quick, progress their shots through the season, whatever. You know, you want to get them scoring opportunities. But like I said, bringing up that Paul Martin point, he's just outstanding defensively. I think he will grow offensively. I mean, he's a big kid, 6'4", right around like 200 pounds. So, I mean, I think give him a couple more years, maybe if Letang's healthy all year, play with him. I could see some offensive growth for sure with him.
Definitely would like to see, a few more points out of him. I don't think overnight he's going to become this crazy offensive sensation, and that's not what he needs to be on this team. And I heard people earlier this week saying that he's kind of like the old style NHL defenseman, where this new age of NHL is all about speed and getting the puck up quickly. When he gets the puck up quickly, yeah, he's not the fastest skater, but you still are gonna have to have a shutdown defenseman. And I think that Brian Dumo is the perfect shutdown defenseman. He's definitely the top defenseman on this team defensively, maybe behind Ian Cole.
One thing that really stands out about him to me is being 25. It's young, all right, and the amount of difficult situations he's been thrown in the past couple of years with playoffs, Letang being out, and he just goes in there no matter what minutes he plays. He's just continues to impress me. I mean, yeah, not so much offensively, but I mean, he still does throw shots at the net. But, not too many people get around him. And for me, coming to playoff hockey, I mean, defense is first. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
always.
Sure.
So I think he's a really solid player. I think we got him for a really good deal, honestly. I thought he was going to ask around 4.5. But coming around to 4.1, I think that's a real solid deal.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a fair deal for sure. There's arguments that for 4.1, you could get someone with more offensive talent. Well, you look at the market right now. Who's out there? Who's a better defenseman that's out there right now than Brian Dumo?
What I would say to that point as well is, look at what Zaitsev got for 1 year.
Right.
He played 1 year of admittedly good hockey, but not better than Brian Dumoulin, and he gets himself a 6-year, $4.5 million a year deal.
Yeah.
He's a bit more dynamic than Dumoulin, but he's had 1 year in North America. It's like the market is, the market for defensemen kind of takes a really wild turn sometimes.
Yeah.
For what some guys can get.
Another thing about Dumoulin is so 4.1 per year. You look at guys that compare around his cap, like Nicholas Hjalmarsson. The amount of success that man has had in Chicago is outstanding. Yeah, he was a really underrated defenseman for them during their cup runs, and he's making 4.1. So I mean, just looking at that, Brian Dublin's he's a young guy. Still, if you ask me, in my opinion, can be compared to Hjalmarsson and the amount of shutdown defense he's played in the playoffs. So
Yeah, I could definitely see that comparison.
yeah, and Alexei Emelin, like, I mean, he's a pretty good defenseman all around. I mean, he's making 4.1.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a good amount of star defensemen that are right around his number that are necessarily like maybe a little bit better offensively skilled, but when it comes to defense, I don't think any guy making around what he's making is a better defensive defense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I like the deal a lot. I'm a big Dumoulin fan. I think that he'll continue to succeed here. Yeah, I don't know. I see it playing out well for the Penguins. 6 years, not too bad. He'll be 31 when that deal's up.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he picks up maybe a career high 25 points within a couple years. I could see it.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and the important thing as well is for the length of the contract. Like, you know, the Penguins Cup window shuts around about 2022. That's when Malkin's contract runs up, Kessel's contract runs up, Letang's contract runs up. They all run up in 2022.
Right.
As long as a player is signed through that point, it really doesn't matter what happens beyond then, because the Penguins will hit a rebuild phase. Even if only for a year or two, they will hit the rebuild phase. So I think the important thing with any deal that gets signed is that they sign them up to 2022, or sign them with the intention of somebody taking over and filling that spot up to 2022.
Yeah.
Right. And I think he doesn't take many penalties. The 2016-17 season, he's only had 14. 15-16, same thing, 14. So, yeah, it's not one of those guys that... Because a lot of times the defensemen, you know, they get called for a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? They're active, playing the body, all that.
Yeah.
Right. But, I mean, it seems like he has a lot of discipline to his game.
Yeah. Cool, so
yeah, it is one thing I think I'd like to see him develop, which is something we saw out of Simon Dupre before he was sadly jettisoned off to Anaheim, where he hadn't really been a physical player until that year. And it's something I think I would like to see out of Dumoulin a little bit as he sort of gets a little bit older. I
mean, he's got the size to do it.
Yeah, he's got the size to do it, and in college he wasn't exactly, you know, running around like Scott Stevens out there, but he would, you know, he'd lay the body pretty solidly, like a lot of players do in college. You know, like they have the face mask and they feel somewhat invincible because of it, so they're more willing to play the body. But I think there is more physicality to come from Dumoulin. I think, obviously not through the regular season, but once we get into the playoffs, and it starts to matter a lot more about what you do physically to your opponent, when you're seeing them, you know, 4 to 7 times every other night, when you can start to develop a bit more of a physical side, I think that would be development in his game that I'd like to see.
I really think that's a solid point. You know, looking at the past couple playoff runs we had, all our star players, young guys, they've taken a good beating, and I mean, it seems that we really don't have that physical aspect. I know it's kind of falling out of the game, but you still need that. I mean, you look at like the Washington series, like, yeah, every game, don't matter if they're losing by a lot or not, they play rough on us.
Yeah,
forecheck, big hits, and everything.
You know, a guy like Tom Wilson or TJ Oshie's gonna finish his check no matter what, and we know sometimes when it gets out of hand, there's no response to it. You know what I mean?
I think the important thing, and this kind of branches into the Ryan Reeves discussion a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that it's not particularly useful to have that sort of response in the sense of a fight necessarily, or to take penalties after the whistle.
Right.
The important thing is to push back whether that be skating away if you're a Sidney Crosby or a Jake Gensel, or whether that means next time that guy comes across the blue line, you put your shoulder into his chest. You know, it's about getting the pushback that best suits the individual player.
Yeah.
And I think with someone like Dumoulin, because he's so even keeled all of the time, nothing ever bothers him. It kind of makes him less willing to play that sort of physical style when it could be beneficial. You know, if you're playing against an Artemi Panarin who's now in the Metro, you know, if he's doing some between the leg deep coming across the blue line 3 times a game, and you hit him the 3rd time, he's not going to try it a 4th time. You know,
Right.
I think there is something to be said for a physical play when you're playing defense first.
I totally agree on that.
Yeah, so it definitely seems like the general consensus is that we all like Doomman, we all like the contract, you know, happy for him, and 6 more years of drinking beers.
Oh yeah, for the boys.
So another re-signing by the Penguins went down this week was Connor Sheary. He signed 3 years, $3 million. That's a $9 million total. What do you guys think of Sheary? Do you guys think he's the real deal, or do you think he's kind of, you know, another situation where this guy plays with Sidney Crosby? Of course, he's going to put up 40 points.
Colin, if you want to go first on this one.
All right, let me just say. All right, my opinion on this deal is an absolute steal. There was a lot of talk about him being traded, you know, shopping around, and I mean, necessarily whether he does play with star players or not. The fact is that we have Crosby, the first line center, Gino, the second line center, the 2 star players. No matter where you throw him, he's going to put points up, regardless where he goes after. The fact that we have them star players now and he's able to play with them, I think is all that matters. Like Jake Gensel, for example, like young kid. I don't think he would have done that great if he wasn't playing with star players like he was. And I mean, that helps him grow into that elite player that he can be. So, coming from me, I feel like that's a solid deal. Connor Sheary is definitely able to skate with Sid, you know, play the game fast. And he does throw the body for a little guy, too. So, I mean, I definitely feel like $3 million to get last year 53 points out of him. I think I could see at least 40, 45 points every year that we have him. I could see that.
Yeah, I like the deal. I'm not sure about his success this year being what we should expect of him every year. He was the top 5-on-5 points per 60 guy in the league. He had 3 points, 5-on-5 per 60 minutes played. He was the highest. He beat Connor McDavid, was second highest, I believe.
Yeah.
And his was 2.79. So he's outscoring everybody at 5-on-5 at a ridiculous level. And I don't think that's sustainable. Connor Sheary, I am not super sold on him because of the inconsistencies.
Yeah, he fell off towards the end of towards the end of the season last year. Jeez, and then even in the playoffs, he really wasn't a factor.
Right.
Yeah, like the thing was, like if you look at over the last 2 years when he's been on his ELC, his 15-16 regular season was pretty bad.
Yeah.
You can give some leeway on that on account of he's a rookie, he's 5'8". You know, you got to learn to deal with being the smallest guy on the ice at all times. You know, like it's something you have to learn to adapt to. So his 15-16 regular season wasn't great. Playoffs, pretty good. Nothing groundbreaking, but was more than good enough on that first line. 16-17 regular season, great. Like, ridiculous point production, considering he gets no power play time whatsoever. You know, he outproduced everyone at 5-on-5. And then you get towards the end of the season, the playoffs, and he just kind of falls into nothing again.
Yeah, kind
He
of.
looks exactly like the player that came up in 15-16 in call-ups. He just kind of he has these stranges of inconsistency, which you can forgive. He's a second-year pro. Oh, sorry, a second-year NHL player. He had a singular AHL pro season before he goes ELC. You know, he's got the talent. He's got the shot. it's the consistency that kind of makes me pause about Connor Sheary as a long-term answer, but at the contract he was signed for is extremely fair because, as Colin said, finding somebody that can produce with Crosby is not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah.
If you remember the Billsma era, where everybody was cycled through on Crosby's wing. You had Russell Fedotenko was up there at one point, Ponikarovsky was up there, Steve Sullivan, Lee Stempniak. Like, you pick a middle six player from 2009 to 2013, good chance somebody tried them on Crosby's wing.
Right.
So finding that player, locking him up 3 years at $3 million, that's a really good deal. That's significantly lower than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Anytime you can get a player that gets you 50 plus points for $3 million, I think you're winning. I don't know. 50 points is that's a good amount of points in this league, especially in this era. And to get that for $3 million, I think that's a steal. I'm kind of on the same page as you, Steve, that I'm not 100% sold on Sheary. I definitely see the potential there, but it's like you said, the consistency. It needs to be there for sure next season.
Yeah, I think if he remains at the same level he is now, that $3 million is going to look like a very good contract. If he can find some consistency, that $3 million is going to look like one of the best contracts in the league.
All right. I feel like I said, Sid right now, arguably playing best hockey he's ever played, right? So, coming at the point, Sheary's able to play with him. I mean, all right, he signed for 3 years. $3 million. Like, yeah, everyone knows that's an outstanding deal. But I do like that deal. I do think he's a great player. I think he's going to keep being a great player. My biggest point about him is going to be when playoffs come around. Because, I mean, like you said, 2015-16, he had a decent playoff run. He only had 10 points out of 23 games. Now, yeah, he was shuffled around on the lines 2015-16 playoffs, but I feel like coming into these past playoffs, so many people were just on his back about everything that he did have a really great season for himself, 53 points. Going into playoffs, second year in the NHL, I think that was too much stress. Everyone was putting too much stress on a young kid, and it just got to him. And you know what I mean? And then after Solly just started throwing him around the lineup, that just got to the kid even more. You know what I mean? Whereas like regular season, game in, game out, towards the midway into the season, he was just with Sid. He knew the play style and everything. No one was really on his back. He was producing, just playing his game. But when playoffs come around, I feel like too many people look for him to be that consistent point guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As long as he's every game, forechecks hard, gets shots on net, he's gonna have to produce more points regardless. If he is playing with Sid or anybody, he's definitely gonna need to show his playoff role. But I think as a second year coming in, he had a really good season. Playoffs weren't hot, but I think next year yeah, he's got 2 Stanley Cups. But I definitely feel like next year is going to be a different look towards Connor Sheary.
The thing to know as well is if you look in the playoffs, he took that 1 or 2 game healthy scratch.
Right.
They took him out of the lineup, put him back in. Sorry, in the 7 games that he was back in, I think he scored 4 points. He might just be one of those players that occasionally just needs to come out of the lineup, have a look at things, recharge, and go back in. That might just be the kind of player he is. That might be the thing he needs to be consistent, is to be taken out of the lineup every 40 or so games, and they look and go, hey, these are the things you need to improve on. Have a couple games off, no problems, and he keeps going. And I think that's sort of leans more into his favor as to him being the player that he is in the regular season. In the playoffs, is that he rebounds well. To every setback he deals with, he rebounds well. His playoffs bad, takes a seat, sees what he does wrong. By all accounts, he was bothering Rick Tocchet in practice. You know, it's something like, what do I need to do? What do I need to improve on? Work with me here, and he's back in the lineup and producing again. You know, I think that really stands to make him one of those players that will succeed no matter whatever gets put in front of him.
Let me throw this question out to you guys. Do you guys think that Sheary could be used as some sort of trade bait at like a deadline for a team that's trying to make a push? Not necessarily this year right now, but maybe, you know, in his contract year or 2 years from now?
Coming into the off season, and obviously we'll get to discussing a third line center later. He was, for me, the trade chip. You want to go get a young third line center who's going to be around through the core years, where the Penguins are making push after push, and there's someone you can base that third line around. Connor Sheary was going to be the chip for me. That I thought, put that down on the table. That will entice me. With this contract, that changes things for me. I thought this contract was going to be a 1 or 2 year deal. It was going to be something where he signs it, and not long after, he gets shoved out the door. Now that he's back on this deal that is both reasonable in term and price, it's hard to want to move that deal. That's the issue. So I think depending on how Sprong, I think, is going to be the guy that sort of replaces him, because Hornquist, his intensity and whatever, I think, is going to be ideally replaced by Aston Reese.
Yeah.
Sprung is going to be the guy that possibly takes Sheary's spot. Sprung is bigger. Sprung has a better shot. Sprung is just as determined. You know, from all accounts, he's the same way as Sheary was, that in a practice or in his development, he is bothering coaches, telling them, this is, like, tell me what I need to improve on.
Right.
If Sprung this year or next year really makes a jump and produces at the NHL level in the opportunities he gets, that makes Sheary expendable. And the benefit to then with this contract is you move the Sheary contract in a year and a half, say Sprung starts producing at a ridiculous rate, and it's like, okay, I have to move somebody to give Sprung a full-time spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's a great option because he's cost controlled.
He's kind of proven himself.
He's proven himself.
Top line minutes.
Exactly. Like he's a great chip to have. Because if you keep him, great. He's going to produce for Sidney Crosby. You trade him, great. People are going to buy him at the inflated rate he's scoring at with Crosby. Because I think fans are quick to attribute plays with Crosby equals increased points total. GMs, I think, see past that a little bit and recognize that
the true talent there.
You know, there's talent there, and playing with Crosby isn't an easy thing.
Yeah.
Plenty of great players have failed to play with Crosby. You look at the Canadian Olympic team back when that was a thing we could look forward to. You know, Chris Kunitz made an Olympic team solely on his kind of ability to play with Sidney Crosby. You know, like, he dragged Chris Kunitz's limp, ironless body to a gold medal. But you can't do that with every player. So I think it's something that Sheary has, like, enormous trade value, especially with this contract now. It would be a mistake to use him to pick up a third center now, unless you're picking up someone like a Peugeot or some like a quality top of the range third line center. There's no point moving Sheary for them.
Yeah,
I agree totally. That was just something that, like you said before, that before the contract, it was like, if you gotta trade someone to get a third line center, who else than Connor Sheary? Because you got this kid, Daniel Sprong. He's pretty good. I don't know if you heard about him. He's coming up. You know, he needs a full-time spot. It just makes sense. But with the contract now, it's kind of like, ooh, we got him on this nice deal, nice term, nice money. It's like, we don't really have to move him if we don't have to. But if, you know, the right deal comes upon us, we will, because we have this kid coming up behind him too.
Yeah, it's a very good spot to be in.
Yeah, I feel if Sheary comes in next season, he puts up decent numbers. If Sprong comes in next season, puts up at least 30 points. I think if Sprong passes 30 points, Sheary's definitely on the block. They're shopping him around. But if Sprong doesn't produce like necessarily like he should, or if he's just not comfy yet, not finding his true placement on what line, who he's playing with, then I think we're gonna keep Sheary. But however, if Sprong comes in just absolutely tears it up, then I definitely feel like Sheary might get moved for a younger guy that's definitely gonna progress into a center role for that that third line center role. But
Yeah, that third line center. That's like the big question right now.
yeah.
Who's gonna do it? Is it gonna be this player, this player, this player? Who's it gonna be? Are they gonna move? Brian Rust used to play center. They're gonna move him back to center. Jay Gensel was a center. Is he gonna play center?
Yeah.
A lot of ifs and ands.
I mean, at the end of the day, if Sprong doesn't produce, Sheary can play with Sid. And I mean, going to you brought up the Olympics. Sid's never. I'm not gonna say he's never produced well with star players, but it's kind of known like Sid's better with mediocre guys that get deep. That grinder role type player.
Yeah.
And like 2016, the World Cup, he played with Marchand and Bergeron. Bergeron's an outstanding player, but Marchand, I mean, he's more of that gritty player, and that line definitely tore it up. You know what I mean? So just looking at them, and Sheary kind of reminds me of Marchand. Not a big guy, gets deep, gets the shots. I don't think he's as skilled as Marchand, but I definitely feel like next season's gonna decide Sheary's fate. But however, if Sprong comes in, tears it up, I think Sheary's getting moved next year for sure.
And I don't think Penguins fans should expect to see Sprong full time next year. I just don't see it.
No,
unless he comes out in camp and preseason and he's putting up 2-3 goals a game. I just don't expect it to happen. I think they're gonna be real patient with him. Him and Austin is.
I think they're going to take the sort of the Gensel approach of where you go down and you dominate in the AHL before you come up. And the problem as well with getting Sprong onto the roster is currently the Penguins have 5 left wingers and 5 right wingers on one-way contracts.
Yeah.
Like the roster at wing is full. They really like Josh Archibald. They really like what he can bring. They gave him a 2-year one-way deal because they know that this kid's good. This kid can play in the NHL. You've got someone like Tom Kuhnackel, who spent the majority of the playoffs scratched. He was a massive part of the Penguins winning in 15-16. He was a forward depth. But you don't need to rush a Sprong. You can say, go down to the AHL.
Yeah.
Learn to play against men.
You don't want to bring Sprong up and him not play. You'd much rather have an Archibald or Kuhnackel sit games in the press box. You don't want Sprong obviously not to play. So if he's gonna have that chance to dominate the AHL, you might as well go ahead and dominate the AHL.
Yeah, I think the Penguins, the Sprong's first year aside, have always done a very good job in recent years, since Rutherford at least has been involved, of developing guys in a beneficial way for not only the Penguins, but the players themselves. You look at young players that have come into the Penguins system, more often than not, they fulfill their potential. Because the Penguins understand that Sprong is very incredibly talented. Sprong could, he's got a chance of playing in a top 6 role in the NHL.
Oh.
But why would you rush him into that? You don't need to. There's...
When you got the players already there, there's no need to rush a young prospect like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think after what happened to Bennett, I don't think they're ever going to try and force that rule anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they really kind of, I don't want to necessarily say forced him to play, but they definitely gave him decent minutes when he first came in the league. And, I mean, it just did not work out. He was young, wasn't ready for it, got injured, and he's just injury prone. Left and right now.
Again, and then got injured again.
I mean, so I think if they had Bennett, if they played him slow, I feel like he could have turned out more like Getzel. You know what I mean? Just tearing it up.
Yeah, Like I see what you mean. I feel like a different approach with Bennett would really be beneficial to him. Let him get used to the rigors of.
Right, like you were saying, the slow approach. Go in the AHL, dominate, earn your potential in the NHL. Because it's a big job. Whether you're fourth line, first line, at the end of the day, if you're not playing your part, it could cost you the game.
Exactly.
So doing that, we kind of touched on a third line center, and I'm gonna go through a couple of articles that I found and list you guys a couple names, a couple of the stats and stuff like that. I want to see what you guys have to say about each of these players. So, first player to start off with is Zegmas Gergesson from Buffalo. He's 23. He has 4 years already in the NHL. That's crazy to think that he's been in the league 4 years. He played third line center for Buffalo. And let me see if I can find his cap friendly real quick. Yeah, Zegmas Gergesson. Let me pull up his cap friendly.
I think he's in RFA right now, I believe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is.
He's on the side right now, I think.
I absolutely love the kid.
Yeah, I would be all in for buying low on Zegmas Gergensen. I would love it. I think he's got a lot of potential that's untapped because Buffalo has been a tire fire for a long time. The thing is now, Jason Botterill is now in Buffalo.
Right, yeah.
Jason Botterill is a very good GM. Jason Botterill has been the Penguins' next man up at GM for the last 5 years or so. I think losing him is going to have a bigger impact on the Penguins than people would like to admit. And you look at the deal he just pulled off with Minnesota.
Right.
He just got Marco Scandella and Jason Pominville for
Tyler Ennis.
for Tyler Ennis and Marcus Foligno. I like Marcus Foligno. Good works hard. But he's, if that's, you look at that deal, the two most valuable pieces in that deal went to Buffalo.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great deal for Botterill. And as much as I would love Zegmas Gergensen, I don't think they're going to sell low on him.
Yeah.
I wonder what Botterill thinks of Derek Poya. If he thinks highly of him, if he, you know what I mean, can see true potential there. If he's like, hey, give me Poya and for Gergensen. I wonder if that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think there's a chance in there. It's both kind of young guys that haven't really succeeded with their current team and both just finished the ALCs, so they're both kind of in a similar spot.
They're both 2012 draft years.
Yeah, I think honestly, if it wasn't Botterill that had gone there, I would be more confident in that deal.
Yeah.
But I think, especially with how the NHL is run, it's kind of not necessarily frowned upon, but it just doesn't really seem to happen that a guy will move to a new team and then trade with his old team.
Yeah.
I think the deal's there. It would make sense for both sides. Although maybe less so now that Nathan Bayou's in Buffalo. But, there's still spots there because you're playing Josh Georges on an every night basis, so you're not exactly dripping with defensive talent. But
right. That's what I was going to touch on. Coming from looking at Buffalo, their decor is not necessarily old yet, but they are getting older. Yeah, they have a couple of young guys, that are going to be pretty good in the future. Yeah, Ristolainen is their star guy, obviously, in defense, but I'm talking about guys that are prospects right now. They have a couple guys, nobody's really outstanding. And looking at Pouliot's arguably not working out here yet. Gergensen's not working out there. When they got Gergensen, he was supposed to be a pretty average player. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
he was a low floor.
Right.
A high floor, low ceiling player.
Right.
He was never going to be a top six center. Scoring 80 points a year. But he was supposed to be solid and simple, and they've kind of tanked his development.
Yeah, it's a 2014-15 season. He put up 30 points in 61 games, and then the following year, in 71 games, he only had 18. So that's almost half points. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's kind of surprising, given Buffalo's hiring of Dan Bylsma. From his time at Pittsburgh, he was never a fan of using younger players. He never felt like his job was to develop the player. He felt like his job was to not lose a game. Not
Right.
necessarily win a game, just not lose it. And that kind of it baffled me when Buffalo hired him in the first place. I thought he was a terrible choice for a young rebuilding team to hire a coach who has a problem playing young players. Never made much sense to me. And I think with someone like Gergensons, or a Jake McCabe, or a Sam Reinhart, like
Their whole core is young. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they have a lot of young talent. Those players really suffered from a coach that doesn't believe that his job is to develop. So it's kind of
the Buffalo saga is a whole different story. I'm sure we'll dive into that, once the season starts and see how they progress. Hopefully, I hope they do good. I want to see that team succeed. I like Jack Edgar a lot.
I do see Buffalo being within 4 or 5 points of the playoffs next year.
They will come back. They will do pretty well. Their only real hole is top 4 lefty.
Yeah.
That's really the one hole they have on their roster. And, Bayou may very well be that guy. He spent a lot of the year playing with Shea Weber in Montreal. He's played heavy minutes before. You never really know what he's going to become when you get out of the fishbowl of Montreal. And you kind of get a little bit of like freedom to not always constantly be under the microscope. And I feel like the Pegulas, I'm never really sure how to pronounce their name, but they catch a lot of flack for being interfering owners and stuff. But you look at what they've done with Buffalo. A lot of the time, they've put money into the team and stayed hands off. They've said, here's your budget. You do what you want to do as the GM. And I think Barrell's really going to have success there. And I'm pretty bummed that the Penguins lost him.
Yeah. Alright, so we got a couple more names. We're going to try and get through these a little bit quickly. Tyler Bozak, Toronto Maple Leaf, is making 4.1 right now. He's becoming a UFA after this upcoming season. He's 31. Phil Kessel's best friend. Used to live in like a penthouse together in Toronto. I don't know what that's about. Apparently he's like hurt right now, but no one really knows why he's hurt or how he got hurt. He's kind of just on like this imaginary injury reserve list that Toronto makes up because Lou Lamoriello could pretty much do whatever the fuck he wants because he's Lou Lamoriello. Yeah, apparently they're trying to shop him, trying to shop JVR. I don't know. Toronto's a weird place right now. What do you guys think about Bozak going to Pittsburgh?
No, never, nope. Negative, 9, yet, none. Don't know any other languages, but please no.
I feel like Bozak, as much hate as he gets, I feel like he's a really underrated player. Like, personally, I don't like the guy, right? I don't like his play style or anything, but he does put up consistent numbers he's never had a season under 20 points. And maybe being able to work a deal to bring him for a third-line center role, I think that'd be a solid move. I mean, the guy would probably put up around, 25 points. Yeah, and if he plays with, say, Sprong gets thrown on the third line for some reason, or Sheary. And, Bozak's a two-way guy that can definitely play the game both ways. But personally, I don't like the guy. I hope the deal doesn't go through. But, statistics say... numbers don't lie. He's an average player. So I feel like if a deal works out where maybe we don't give up necessarily a lot for him, I definitely feel like it'd be a really good move, honestly, for Pittsburgh.
My dislike for the move stems from a couple of things. I wrote an article about it, which I think got published today, which is Thursday. He doesn't fit the role, is the issue. He doesn't play good defense. His Fenwick, which is my preferred fantasy stat, because the Penguins block a ton of shots, so it's fair to recognize them as a legitimate hockey move. So his Fenwick is relatively bad to the rest of his team, apart from one outlier year, 15-16, which was massive compared to every other year. He doesn't kill penalties. He doesn't play particularly good defense. Tyler Bozak is a second-line center, and he should play like a second-line center. Putting him into the third-line center role for the Penguins doesn't work, because as the Penguins team is currently made up, Sidney Crosby is not full-time penalty killer. Evgeny Malkin is not full-time penalty killer. The only full-time penalty-killing center on the Penguins right now is Carter Rowney.
Right.
The issue is that third-line center needs to kill penalties. Tyler Bozak has not killed penalties since 2009-2010 season, and then
There's a reason why.
he just isn't good at it. There's a lot of penalty-killing players for the Penguins. Hagelin, Archibald, Kunackle, Rust, Wilson kill penalties, Brownie. There's plenty of players that could kill penalties. The issue is, you need a center. Because if you lose a face-off on the penalty kill, you're stuck in your zone, running around, trying to play your box when the team has the puck in your zone for an extended period of time. We saw it with when the Penguins go through their waves of being bad on the power play. They lose the initial face-off, and if you control the face-offs, you normally control the game. So that third line center role needs to be somebody that can kill penalties.
Yeah,
I don't think
totally, 100% agree. These next two names are my personal two favorites. I think these two names make the most sense, and I don't know if they have the best possibility, but I would definitely like to see these two names. First one, Cody Eakin, played in Dallas last year, got selected by Vegas in the expansion draft. He's had 3 straight years of 35 to 40 points, except for last year. He had a down year, but we're not really looking at that. He had 12 points, 3 goals, 9 assists, 3 goals, 9 assists in 60 games. Matt State, or Cody Eakin, he's at $3.85 million for the next 3 years. So obviously more cap would have to be retained there, or we'd have to trade away someone that's making a decent amount, i.e. Olimata. But Cody Eakin is a awesome two-way forward that took a lot of important face-offs for Dallas, and he was actually pretty decent in the circle. I think that's where he kind of shines away from Tyler Bozak, where he was better in face-offs and has the ability to kill opponents.
Quickly, I want to jump in and say, trading Olli Mata, terrible idea. Ian Cole is not a top 4 defenseman, and playing him in the top 4 would be the saddest of all the timelines. I like Cody Eakin as a player. I don't like paying Cody Eakin $3.85 million. The biggest issue with the Penguins cap right now is Carl Hagelin.
Yeah.
Carl Hagelin makes $4 million,
Jeez.
and he's going to play on the 4th line. He's probably going to play on the 4th line. He's not going to get many minutes. He had the empty net goal in the final, and he's a very good defensive player. But you don't pay $4 million for that unless you're Garth Snow.
Yeah.
He gets paid an incredible amount of money for as little production as he provides. The issue being, he doesn't provide any production, so no one's going to want to trade for him.
Yeah.
So the issue would be, Vegas, thankfully, has a ton of cap space. So they could afford to retain salary on Eakin. The problem when people have to retain salary is that it costs you more to acquire a player if they're going to retain salary on him.
Right.
I think a good potential trade option would be Dominic Simone, who's down in Wilkes-Barre. Personally, I'm not particularly high on the guy. He's a kind of a top 6 or bust guy. He's pretty undersized. I think he's 5'11". He's only 174 though. He kind of gets moved about a bit. He has some potential though. He's a very skilled player. He's produced at pretty decent rates for Wilkes-Barre for the last couple of years. I think a deal involving Dominic Simone and a pick for Cody Eakin at a retained salary makes a lot of sense for both the Penguins. It makes sense for Vegas because they get picks and they get to have prospects that are close to the NHL, which is what they need because they have a lot of young prospects that they've just drafted. They have a lot of roster players. They don't have anyone that's sort of in that advanced second, third year of development situation quite yet. So I think that's a potential deal that really could go down.
I like the deal if we can find another way to make the deal happen with them retaining salary cap, as well as us. I know there's a lot of talk of maybe giving up like Brian Rust for him. If we can make a deal not giving him up, as that third line would look like Hagelin, Eakin, Rust, I feel like that'd be a really effective third line. However, the amount of cap he has is the issue. So, like you said, if we can maybe squeeze a AHL guy prospect coming up, then I mean I like the deal. But if we're gonna have to give up one of our good players right now that's been effective day in day out, I don't think that deal's gonna happen.
No, I would be upset to lose Brian Rust or Scott Wilson.
Oh, absolutely.
For getting that third line center, because although there is a lot of forward depth, losing that depth to fix the center position, I think just creates another hole. Because Hagelin may bounce back, but Hagelin in a third line role, you're still paying a lot of money for a guy that's not really going to produce much for you. It's. Yeah. I don't think there would be a way to convince Vegas to take on Hagelin's contract. Otherwise, the Penguins probably would have tried in the expansion draft. I think there is definitely a deal to be made there if they're willing to retain salary on Eakin.
Yeah, for sure. Last name on this list, and I'll be sure to link this article in the description of the YouTube channel here. But last person is 33-year-old center Matt Stajan. He's currently playing in Calgary. He has a $3.125 million cap hit this upcoming season would be his final year. So Matt Stajan is your stereotypical third line center. I at least in my mind. I don't think he's anything better. I don't think he's anything less. He's not gonna, put up crazy points, but he'll get points when he needs to, and he'll play that shutdown defensive role that Penguins are what they're looking for in a third line center.
My issue with Stajan is his skating.
Yeah.
Nick Bonino is an average skater. And you look at him when he plays in the Penguin system, he looks like he's skating in treacle or custard or any other form of viscous liquid. He's not going anywhere in a hurry. And that's an average skater in the Penguin system. You take a bad skater like Matt Stajan, he's gonna be left in the defensive zone. Well, his wingers are from the offensive zone. He's gonna be a step behind the play. He's gonna struggle. I wouldn't hate Matt Stajan as a fourth line center. I think as a third line center, it's gonna be difficult for him to keep up with. You look at the potential combinations for that third line. You could have Rust and Wilson on his wings. He could have Rust and Hagelin. He could have Rust and Hornquist. He could have Wilson and Hagelin. Like, there's a ton of very quick options there that I think will sort of. Stajan is very much a Western Conference player.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a slightly slower style. Things are a little bit more clutch and grabby. Refs are a little bit more lenient with it. I think that's really where he thrives. And honestly, with Calgary, I don't know how much they'd be willing to let him go. They don't need the cap right now. They're a pretty young team, especially up front.
Mm-hmm.
The leadership that he potentially brings to them, I think, is something
pretty valuable to them.
Yeah, I think his value to Calgary is going to be significantly higher than his value to any other team, because his contract is so much. So teams are going to be looking at him as a negative asset. They're going to be thinking, we're doing a favor to this team, taking him off their roster. I don't think Calgary sees it that way. So I don't know if he's even necessarily available, but I wouldn't be particularly excited if the Penguins got him for the third line center spot.
Yeah.
A couple other names, we're not really going to talk about them, but just to throw them out there for funsies, Jordan Stahl is always out there. Matthew Shane, typical third line center Matthew Shane.
I guess go get John Tavares. Screw it.
William Collison.
Just get all Team Canada.
Eric Holla from Vegas. Actually like Eric Holla a lot. And we got my buddy Adam Lowry up in Winnipeg. So a couple of other names out there. Definitely would be interesting to see what the Penguins do for the third line center. Even fourth line center, honestly. We're kind of ignoring that Matt Cullen still doesn't know what he's going to do with his life.
Dad's coming back, don't worry.
That'd be great, that's what we all want. But
To be honest, I wouldn't mind seeing Carter Rowney in that spot. I think Teddy Bluegrass from Wilkes-Barre has a legitimate chance of making the team as a fourth line center. He's an incredibly defensive, solid prospect. He's had an NHL-ready defensive game since his sophomore year of college. He's a really, really good player. I'm excited to see him. Someone that's kind of gone under the radar a little bit is Greg McKegg, who they signed this year as a depth forward from Florida or Tampa, whichever one he ended up out after waivers. He had incredibly good junior production. He's had pretty good AHL production. I think he has a chance of making that, fourth line spot because his AHL production is pretty par for Carter Rowney's as well. So that's someone else to keep an eye out as well. I think they're going to have a bit of an internal battle for that fourth line spot, but that third line center spot is definitely going to be achieved via a trade, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Alright, cool. That's gonna wrap up a long episode for us here at the Let's Talk Penguins podcast. Thank you guys for watching, listening, same difference. And we're gonna try to shoot out an episode every week for the rest of the summer, leading up to the season start. So hopefully you guys will join us again next week.